enough disrespect from a friend for you to like cut them off, because friendship breakups are like pretty rare, innit? I've kind of had a couple, right? One of them was maybe self-inflicted. The other one was just, I guess, what can you do? You can't really explain that too tough, even though I know why. You can't really explain, but friendship breakups are quite weird, innit? Because you don't necessarily break up with your friends. You never do. It just kind of peters out, and you just, you both grow apart and things go in different ways. Maybe you move, they get married, whatever. Things change, circumstances and life gets in the way, and then you guys just both let it happen. You let the situation kind of evolve, and you just kind of let it go away. Because if you really want to save a friendship, you can. But it's very rare that you kind of say to somebody, hey, I don't want to be your friend anymore. I've had it happen to me, and it's like, it can be brutal when someone tells you, hey, I just don't want to be your friend. Like, I know we had some good times in the past, but I've moved on. I've got a loving group of friends, and I don't think you're going to fit that circle. And I kind of wish, not even I wish you well, just, stop contacting me, leave me alone. It's like, ugh. It can be a bit of a brutal blow, but it doesn't necessarily work out that way. So sometimes it feels like friends can take the piss more than people you're in a relationship with, because relationships can they usually end, and when they end in a really brutal way, or they end really well, where you can kind of still be friends, but usually it's a kind of a clean break of like, we're done, and on this date you might end up hooking up later on down the line, but there's usually a cut off, like, hey, we're done because of this X, Y, and Z. But I think sometimes friends can take advantage because there's no clear boundaries as to what is enough to what's the thing that's going to cause me to not speak to you again. No one has that line, really. They say, people like to admit, kind of pretend they do, but they don't necessarily have, because if you think about all the stuff your friends have done to you over the years, that's been quite questionable, and then you think about the times that you've kind of snapped at somebody who's a stranger at the slightest bit of inconvenience or rudeness, you see that you do sometimes, most people, if you've definitely got a group of friends, you definitely treat your friends differently than how you treat strangers, which is understandable because they're your friends. But in this case with Joe Budden, it feels like he takes advantage of that, and maybe it's because of his status and whatnot, I don't know. But you would think the people who have been there for him when he was going through his rough times in the industry, and also the people who have been consistent in terms of their friendship with him and have accepted his good side and his bad side, will be the ones that he'd be a little bit more willing to be, I wouldn't say lenient, but he'd be willing to kind of, whatever way he kind of sees things, he'd be willing to sort of like bend it a little bit to kind of appease them. You'd think so, innit? But he doesn't. And this exchange is just weird. This is a thing I'm going to play where they're basically discussing what led to the breakup, and Miles basically saying that, hey, you said a thing that would, most people would never accept, and I just wasn't going to accept that thing you said to me. And then look at Joe Budden's response. So this is meant to be a friend, right? Telling you what you said to them kind of hurt my feelings, basically, without, in no certain terms. And just hear what Joe Budden's say. Let me put this up on the screen here so you can hear this. This reply is just wild to me.
You niggas left your job, Mo.
That's not what happened, Joe. Joe, you looked me in my face and told me this show was none of my business.
Yeah.
That's what you told me.
I was there.
That's not crazy to you? Is that not crazy?
So, in that instance, right, you would imagine someone that's your friend would say something like, oh, Jamal says to him, hey, you told me the podcast was going to be none of my business, which obviously is rude considering it is his business because they built the thing together. And a normal person would say, oh, I'm sorry, and I'm really sorry I said that. You know what I mean? I didn't mean to say it that way or whatever. But you would sort of like respond to that person saying something that you said to them hurt their feelings, and you'd kind of want to make sure that you apologize and let them know that, hey, I didn't mean it that way and I'm really sorry and I want to move on from this, or I want to do better, whatever. There'd be an apology that would respond to it. But he's like, yeah, I know, I was there. Like, I was there. And if you, and I think the clip itself, it cuts here, but the actual full clip, on the other side, he says something like, oh, I shouldn't have said that to you, which basically you can interpret as, I meant what I said, but maybe I shouldn't have told you, because it's always going to, get received the wrong way, because he genuinely believes that, hey, this podcast is mine and the business side of it is none of your business, which is insane if you think about how this podcast has grown from, our name is Podcast Later to obviously it's an evolution now with all the other co-hosts they had prior. these two guys are instrumental in it, right? And you saw the numbers of their comeback and how people were, trolling online and commenting and wanting to come back. Like, they're an integral part of the show. Without them, the show it's not that interesting. Fair enough, Joe himself is like blockbuster in terms of his crazy behavior, but what makes the show is the fact that no one can understand how people are friends with this guy in Joe Budden, and then you got his two friends in the industry or outside the industry who he knows, who have knowledge of the industry too, I'll say, per se, right? And that's what makes the show like what it is. And obviously you got the other characters, Parks and everybody else, but that exchange just left me floored, man. It made me think to myself, you know what? Friendship is so complicated, and I think some people, especially when they have like, some of Joe's personality traits, can take advantage of friendships because for the most part, everyone else has come into Joe's life, in a romantic sense or sometimes in a business sense. They've sort of fallen out with him and never looked back again, right? Because they don't feel like they, owe him whatever that sense of loyalty, whatever it may be, because they just, they had a short experience. It wasn't really going the way they wanted it because they felt as if, the person who they met and who he devolved into was something else, whatever it may be. But the one constant he's had is actually been his friends, but he doesn't even treat those people good. It's really, really wild. And then talking about owing people things, this other clip here is even more insane. This is about some exchange that they have where somehow Miles trying to convince Joe that he should have respect for his friends, and Joe's basically saying that no, I don't owe anybody. No, yeah, basically Miles says the words exactly. You owe your friends respect, and Joe's basically like, I don't owe anybody anything. I'm not in debt. Playing that weird semantics game. It's just a wild clip to really kind of get to the bottom of, because it kind of really shows a lot of the things that people have been not a fan of when it comes to the old Joe Budden. So let's play it from about here, right? Yeah, let's play it from there.
Disagree. You didn't build anything with Jay.
Y'all weren't friends.
Y'all not friends.
Your chemistry and actual friendship didn't base on the ability for you, Jay, and Def Jam to put out music. Like, yeah, it was
totally different.
Completely different. Jay didn't owe you nothing. Us, the three of us, all owe each other something because we're friends.
What do you think I owe y'all?
As friends, I think back to the respect thing and the understanding thing. And
in the entitlement thing. What do you think I owe you, Rory?
Oh, just as I'm not talking anything outside of friendship, and that comes down to respect.
What do you owe someone in friendship? I'm asking.
Respect and communication amongst each other.
I owe that to strangers in the street.
Different level of it.
Not really.
Yeah, it is.
Not to me.
Okay,
you owe strangers in the street respect?
Yes, Small. I respect people in the street as I go about. That's how I carry myself.
The same level of respect.
That is how I carry myself. Yes.
That's not what I asked you. I said, do you owe them that? A stranger. Do you owe a stranger respect?
I freely give it.
Do you owe a stranger respect?
No.
Okay, so then you can't say that. You told my friends.
But you don't.
You owe friends respect.
I don't believe that.
Yes, you do.
You don't believe that you owe your friends respect?
I don't believe that.
If it's one thing I've learned throughout this, I'm never gonna expect anybody to move how I move. So that's fine. If you don't feel that way, that's fine. I'm just telling you the way.
And Rory, the word "owe" speaks to entitlement, and I don't have entitlement even in my friendships. I am appreciative of my friends.
You owe your friends respect.
I am grateful for my friends, and because of that, my behavior I would hope it exudes that. No.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I struggle to understand these things. Like, I remember watching Girls. That's one of the things that kind of got me. This is a weird correlation, but one of the things that kind of put me off watching Girls, Lena Dunham's, hit TV series, just because I couldn't understand or fathom or come to grips with the idea that Lena Dunham's character had, such a good friendship circle. And people wanted to be in her life and, men in her life and stuff. It just didn't make any sense. That person had forget what she looks like, just the personality, the character that she wrote about in that story, which I'm sure some of it was autobiographical. But by and large, that person was horrible. And somehow this person had a large group of friends that loved her, great male interests, while some not so great. A family that was willing to give her anything to kind of make sure she achieves her dreams. It just didn't make any sense. It didn't add up. But then the more I've kind of, the more I've experienced different working environments and I've come across different type of people, it's definitely led me to believe that maybe I was wrong in that assertion, and maybe people like Joe and people like that Len Dunham character in Girls somehow have a way of like I don't know, like they have this magnetic power. I don't know what it is, where even though they're shitty people and they have some odd tendencies and they say the most craziest things, I guess maybe because they just keep it interesting and it's wild that people just flock to them. I don't know what the thing is, but surely there has to be a limit. That's what my whole point of this whole rant is that isn't there a limit to how much a friend can disrespect you to your face, by their words or by their actions and deeds? Isn't there a limit? Don't we all have limits that is enough, especially when you consider the podcast we're talking about, the Joe Budden podcast. I think Mal mentions a few times, money's not an issue for me, respect is a big deal, I don't care about money, but we have to have respect. If that's the case, then I don't see how you can record with this with a guy who clearly thinks that he's your boss and he can do what he wants, even though you put this thing together, and who kind of doesn't understand why you would be upset when he says that the business of the podcast is not your business. It's just an insane thing to me. An insane thing. It kind of briefly reminds me a little bit of the situation I went through when I was doing parties for a bit here in Dorset in London, and where I had a little falling out with a guy that I was doing them with, and it was, looking back on it, it was stupid. It wasn't really anything to really write home about. I can't even remember actually what caused the actual rift itself, but from what I can remember from my crappy memory, it did involve something along the lines of like not really knowing. There was nothing was said explicitly about what role someone had in the thing that we had, the operation, right? The roles weren't really specified that well. Obligations and requirements, I don't know, something along those kind of lines, right? And that got a bit messy, and then one person feels like they're doing less, one person feels like they're doing more, and then of course as men we don't really talk our issues through. We just kind of clam up and just retreat in our corner. And then we had the bar manager at the time was sort of playing us off each other at that point, because obviously they noticed the rift, and then it just got a bit messy. But most of it came down to the fact that, once that line had crossed in both of our eyes, where we thought, hey, you disrespected me or you went over the line, there was no real going back. It never was going to, that friendship was never going to get rescued in any meaningful way. And that was the line. It kind of just crossed, and then from there we just never spoke, and it just kind of, petered out, and that was what it was. And I don't know whether or not it changes if the other person in the relationship is somebody of, some sort of status, some sort of some sort of authority. They have some sort of clout, they have some sort of money. I'm not sure if that changes out. My sensible brain would tell me it definitely does change if the other person has got some sort of clout that most likely people are going to be willing to sit down with you and reconcile and try and work things through, because they need something from you, right? Because you got something you can offer them, because you have influence, you have power, you have a network, you have wealth, whatever it may be called, right? You have women, whatever, right? There's something there that you can hold on. But I guess if you're just a regular dude, it can be a little bit easier maybe to break up with your friends. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong in this whole thing, but that just threw me for a loop. I just watched that again, those clips. I was just thinking, God damn it, man. Surely there has to come an end where, some disrespect is just too much to just handle. But, maybe I'm in the minority here. Maybe I'm in the minority.